The Prime Minister has called for people to stop panic buying fuel, saying things may get much worse as the crisis in the Middle East war drags on. Speaking after a meeting at the National Cabinet in Hobart, Anthony Albanese confirmed the appointment of a National Fuel Supply Taskforce coordinator. He assured the public that Australia is well prepared, but says there is more to be done.
I want to assure Australians at this time that Australia is well prepared. Our fuel supply is currently secure. However, I want us to be over-prepared. I understand there are Australians in some parts of our nation that are really worried as they watch what is unfolding in the Middle East, and that is understandable. But we're doing all that we can to secure our fuel supply and to get it to the places that need it. Today, National Cabinet acknowledged that the longer the conflict the Middle East goes, the more significant the impact will be for global supply chains, fuel prices and the wider economy. And it's also understood by Australians that this is a global issue that we are dealing with.
The Prime Minister there, and the host of Afternoon Briefing, Patricia Karvelas, is joining us now. PK, hello to you. What was your main takeaway from the Prime Minister's comments and his announcement this morning?
Well, the Prime Minister was doing a couple of things today. Obviously, he's gathered around all the state and territory leaders. As you'd expect, we're a federation. We can't do these big things without coordinating together. But his real message was that Australia is on top of this. His big line being, we are over-preparing, so that he can send a message to Australians who are clearly very concerned about this war and its economic implications, as they should be. The oil price, supply issues, the consequences on inflation, all of that is very real, that the Australian government has a process to coordinate it. We knew from yesterday, of course, that there was going to be this national czar appointed. We now know who that person is, and we're getting some idea about just what that might look like. Now, that's a very strong coordinating role with the states and territories. They'll all appoint somebody to do the job as well. But you've got to sort of think about what that looks like in the future. That's a coordination role, and we're not there yet, but there is a lot of speculation about what that exactly looks like, about where fuel goes, where diesel goes, what the priorities are when it comes to the construction sector, when it comes to the agriculture sector getting, I suppose, being the front of the line because they are so key to our economy, our food production, our ability to operate as a nation, and having an ecosystem that can really control where it all comes from. So he also told us there'd be more announcements, and my understanding is there will be more rollouts of sort of announcements around fuel security and supply in the country. But it just demonstrates that, you know, the government, I think a couple of weeks ago, thought perhaps this would be a shorter period of a war, which of course has huge implications still, but you can kind of contain them a bit. They are now preparing for some pretty dark and pretty concerning contingencies, and this is just part of that story.
How does this mark a bit of a shift from the Prime Minister here, from the start when he was more focused on urging people not to panic buy fuel?
Well, he's still doing that, and I don't think that's unwise. I mean, clearly there are some good reasons for farmers to be concerned about just how much fuel they have, given how much they rely on it for their basic business. But there has been some concerning scenes of people, you know, stockpiling fuel at different places across Australia. So what he's trying to do is tell people to sort of calm down. The government's got this. So that's still there. What he's also doing, which is an escalation, and I think it's an escalation in line with the war escalating. We are seeing an escalation in this war. I mean, that's being clearly demonstrated through Israel's actions. That, can I say, Donald Trump has been also on Truth Social saying he did not support what was happening in relation to Israel's latest assault. So that's interesting to see too, what he's kind of meaning there. But I think the government is responding to a set of conditions which are getting worse, and it has to contingency plan. I mean, all governments have to do that. The government's also trying to calm people down. There's a lot of behavioural stuff that goes with this. We knew this with COVID. People respond, they get alarmed. I don't think that's unreasonable because they see the world around them and they think we need to be prepared as a family or as a business. The Prime Minister's trying to say the government is coordinating this, so please hold back. Will people listen? Well, I hope so, because we do obviously have finite supplies and there will be consequences in terms of supplies. And it's also going to hit our economy, which I think we're about to get to. But there are huge implications for our budget and our economy.
Well, let's get to that now. The Treasurer, Jim Chalmers, has given an important pre-budget speech. Were there any surprises in that speech, PK?
Yeah, a lot of surprises. So the Treasurer has told us, in I think a very kind of disturbing update, that productivity targets are going to take closer to 5 years to be achieved. So that's concerning. Remember, there was the productivity roundtable. The government wanted to focus on productivity. It demonstrates that that's clearly harder than the projections, and I think that's one of the big reveals of his speech. So he's kind of preparing the Australian public in many ways for a difficult budget coming up. He's also told us the net overseas migration is 45% below its peak. But Treasury expects the fall to be more modest over the forecast period, mainly due to lower than expected departures. So you'll know that the big immigration story has been around a lot of alarm around the levels of immigration. They are coming down. The Treasurer is saying they're not quite coming down as much as perhaps we thought. And then he's told us about these scenarios, and they are quite alarming. He's modelling, well, the Treasury Department's modelling 2 scenarios. A third, more drastic one is also under development. One is a shorter-term scenario, the oil price staying at about $100 a barrel for the first half of this year and then gradually returning to pre-conflict prices by the end of the year. So that's one. The more prolonged scenario has the oil price reaching $120 a barrel in the first half of the year and then taking 3 years. Think about that time frame, 3 years to get to pre-conflict price. And all of those estimates and those durations, which they're trying to model, and modeling's very hard because you can't really predict the future, right? So you have to have a few contingencies. It shows that GDP growth will basically be a problem as well. It would cut GDP growth by up to 0.2 percentage points across our major trading partners as well. So the inflation prediction, which was leaked out yesterday but he's delivered as well, is also an issue. We might get up to 5%, he says. So that's obviously really concerning too. He acknowledges, and I just want to mention this because it's a really important part of the speech, that inflation was a problem before this conflict, and I think that's an important concession. But then he talks about this conflict galvanising the government's commitment to doing a couple of things. One of them is cutting spending, so you'll see spending cuts in this budget. There's been criticism that the government's spending too much money and is inflating inflation, is contributing to inflation. The other one is tax reform. And the Treasurer never miss an opportunity for a crisis. The Treasurer is using this crisis to go full throttle on tax reform, property taxes and intergenerational tax reform. That's what he's talked about in this speech. How far they go, we don't know yet. He says he hasn't landed on all of that. But that is big stuff. Whether the Australian public is now ready for this, where they see the world in this shape and the Treasurer's trying to make the case for big change, let's see, because it's a big politically risky thing to do. But he's really made the case saying basically the budget has to be reshaped, less spending, big thing for Labor to say, and also changing taxation. Big things, and that's what the Treasurer has tried to tell us as he tries to shape his May budget.